The Ritter. Hall. Yes!
He's all ACC. Strong, tough.
Mallory back for Hall. He'll fire it up there. And ready for three.
Hall with the offensive rebound to Ritter. A lot of orange behind the UVA bench.
Good pass.
Ritter wide open. It's good. Trying to get to the 10. Good defense there by Ethan Berg. Shot clock at 5. Thomas from the outside. Another three.
Out rebounding Wake 11-3. 6 minutes into this first half. Stole it away. Active
spots on the court and being able to finish through traffic.
Might be bigger.
Jalen's big, man.
Is he 6'2"?
Yeah, okay.
Drew an offensive foul.
What's up, everyone from the Center Hub who's tuning in? Today we got a special guest with us, as you can obviously see in front of you. I'm here talking to Dallin Hall, former BYU guard, former UVA guard. Dallin, how are we doing today, man? How are things going?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you for the opportunity, and yeah, man, life is good. Excited for my future.
Yeah, so before we get to the future, let's talk a little bit about the past. Um, obviously, I did my digging on you, and you started in Utah. You had your mission work for a couple of years. You played at Fremont. Can you talk to me a little about your recruitment and like what it was like, and was it always going to be BYU for you?
Yeah, I could talk about that. So for me, BYU was not like the dream school growing up. I'm from northern Utah, so my parents both graduated from a school called Weber State, which most people in the basketball world have only heard of because of Damian Lillard. And so I might have been more of a Utah State, Weber State fan than the schools down south like Utah and BYU. But yeah, recruitment was pretty slow till about my sophomore year is when I grabbed my first offer. Going into my junior year, I think, and that was from Utah Valley. So Coach Pope, when he was at Utah Valley, him and his staff was the first school to kind of offer me, and then over the next couple of years, they started to flood in. I had a really good senior year, and so that's when some bigger schools kind of jumped in, and I had narrowed my final schools down to BYU, Utah State, Oregon State, and St. Mary's. But I felt like at the time I just kind of wanted to stay close to home. My family's super important to me. And so ultimately I narrowed it down to BYU because I felt like Coach Pope had taken that job and they were the first ones to believe in me. And it seemed like a great opportunity because I wanted to play pro, and that felt like a good launching pad. So that was ultimately the decision.
And it's interesting because, over your career at BYU and now UVA, you've played in more conferences and played for more head coaches than you have for schools.
Yeah.
So what's it been like playing in three pretty big name conferences? And can you kind of go off of that? Can you kind of also tell me what it's been like to learn from three great head coaches and, Mark Pope, Kevin Young, and Mark Odom, and what those guys have taught you?
Yeah, for sure. I feel super fortunate and blessed to play in three different conferences. Um, WCC, we didn't have our greatest year. I think we finished like fifth. I was a freshman, and it was fun. I was able to start for most of my freshman year. Um, then we joined the Big 12, and everyone, like, we were picked like 13th, and so everyone thought we would not be good. But we ended up finishing fifth and surprised a lot of people. Had a good year, made the tournament, got knocked out the first round. And that's when Coach Pope took the Kentucky job. That was my first time in the portal, which is a wild, crazy thing. And then Kevin Young came in, and I wanted to stay at BYU. I felt like I had built something good there. So I played for him, learned a lot from him and his staff. The season for me was a little up and down, but we ultimately made it to the Sweet 16, and that was an super fun experience. And then I just felt like it was time for a change, and entered the portal again, and that's when Coach Odom recruited me to Virginia, which is funny because we beat them in the first round of March Madness. And so I headed out there, and I would say like playing in the different conferences has been cool to see all the different venues, playing some of the greatest venues in college basketball. And then playing for different coaches is it's taught me a lot about the game. Like I've been able to pick some of the best basketball minds' brains. I'm a hungry learner, and so I was able to learn a lot from each of them, and feel like my knowledge of the game grew a ton. And then it's funny because every coach has like their own lingo, so you kind of have to reset every year and figure out what the lingo is for certain terms and things. But the schemes were all pretty similar.
Yeah, it seems like over your career you've done a great job of developing, especially on when it comes to your playmaking ability. So, you've got a crazy assist to turnover ratio. I'm sure you're aware of that. Can you walk me through your decision-making process when you're on the court a little bit?
Yeah, so for me, I didn't understand it super well till I got to college. Like I just played really cerebral, and I still do, but now to be able to explain it is like I'm trying to always create advantages, where the defense is at a disadvantage, 4-on-3, 5-on-4, whatever. And then at that point, it just becomes about making the right play. So if they overhelp, finding the open guy so then he can play an advantage, or if they don't help, punishing him and finishing it at the rim. And so I've always loved the pick and roll since I was really young, just because that's what builds an advantage. And then I feel like I've been able to always get downhill pretty well to put pressure on teams. And when guys overhelp, just punish, that with the quick kick or the lob. So that's kind of the way I see the game is like you want to put pressure on the defense at all times, and create advantages. And then you got to be able to make the correct decision in those advantages.
Which is something that, like I said, your assist to turnover ratio, for those of you who don't know what that is, 3 assists per every turnover is almost unheard of for a lot of guys, and you've been doing that for a long time. So to kind of continue, switch ends of the floor a little bit. Do you remember how much do you remember that Wright State game?
I remember pretty vivid. Like it was pretty recent. Was closer than we would have liked, but it's good to get the first one.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. And one thing I noticed is with you in that game, Pangonis was the guy that you had to slow down. And, he had 5 points over the game. Can you talk a little bit about how you've developed defensively and kind of in that game specifically, like how you were able to help shut him down?
Yeah, I think I've always had the goal and dream to play in the NBA, and something I was always told was like you have to be like a defensive weapon. You cannot be a liability on the defensive end. And so my whole college career, I feel like I've grown a lot just by learning from coaches like tips and tricks, but ultimately like defense is a lot about heart and effort and consistency. So this year especially, I feel like I took on the role of, guarding the best player if they weren't a big, and really embrace that, and um just tried to find ways to slow guys down. And so I use my physicality. I'm quicker than most guys expect, and then just like you're thinking of the game to kind of stay ahead of guys. So kind of combine those three to find ways to get guys out of rhythm and slow them down.
And so, like, how do you think, like, when you get to the next level, um, those two skills and other skills in particular are going to help you out?
I think like I don't steal the ball a ton. That's something I'm trying to grow in, more active hands. But like making guys miss, take hard shots. Um, like I feel like I do really well at that. And I think that's something like at the next level, if you can get guys to take low percentage shots consistently, that's usually going to give you the best chance to have them have a bad night and ultimately help your defense be effective. So I think that translates. And I started picking up full court this last year. That was brand new. And so I'm sure there'll be some of that too in my next stop. So
Well, one thing I really like about your game, Down, is that, people don't always notice how much you impact winning. Just to give you a little stat, UVA's net rating per 100 possessions, which is like, uh, how much better they are. It dropped 10 points when you're not on the floor. Um, it was, it was 20 when you're on the floor, 10 when you're off the floor. So, can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to impact winning? Because at every stop you've been at, you've made the tournament, right? So, can you talk to me a little bit about that?
yeah, this is something me and my dad talked a little bit about. My dad's been a big influence on my life. He played college basketball at a low junior college level. So we have a lot of conversations, but at one point I was getting frustrated, especially last year at BYU. I just didn't have the ball as much as I was used to the previous year. And he was like, told me some comment from I think Billy Donovan when he was coaching, I think in college. But basically, he was like, even if you're a guy who has the ball in your hands a lot, you only have, there's probably like 85 to 80% of the game where the ball's not actually in your hands. Like that's just how basketball is. And so, what are you doing during all that time to help contribute to winning? And that was kind of eye-opening for me because I realized like, okay, there's a lot of different ways I can impact winning besides just having the ball and just scoring. And so I try and use like leadership to elevate the guys around me on both ends of the floor. A lot of that's like spending time with your teammates, connecting with them, building trust, so that you can communicate the right way on the floor and push guys and help them be at their best. A lot of it's like just defensive, like communication and effort, things I kind of mentioned earlier, but also applying that to the whole defense so everyone's on the same page and holding everyone to that standard. And then offensively, it's like, an area I want to grow is definitely like putting more pressure on defense with my shot, but um, creating those advantages and then putting people in position to score easy buckets like catch and shoot threes, lob dunks, easy layups. That just takes a ton of pressure off guys and gives them easy buckets to help them get going and get in a rhythm. So those are some of the things that I like try and take pride in, and also just like the playing hard. Like I think that's an underrated skill these days. Um, and that's something that I just take pride in is playing, being the hardest playing guy out there and setting the tone for my team.
I love it. I have two more for you.
Okay.
You may have answered it. I think you've kind of answered it a bit already, but what are you currently working on to improve your game post college?
Yeah, I think shooting is like the biggest one. It was a little up and down this last year for me, and just like the volume was a little inconsistent, but I think putting pressure on teams with my shooting is like going to be a big step for me because it makes reads easier. Like guys got to close out harder. Now you're creating more advantages if they over close out. So I think just being more consistent there. Um, and then I would say like just like rim finishing with maybe a floater. That's something a lot of my coaches have told me like think would be an important step for my development is having that when you can't get all the way to the backboard, but you're around the rim. And those are kind of two of the big things that I see jumping out.
I love it. And then this last one, I might throw you off a little bit with this question, but when I was looking on the UVA page, in your bio, apparently you went viral for doing a Korg from Thor Ragnarok impression. Can
Yo,
you tell me about
I
that?
did. Bro, that was my first time on ESPN, which is not like as a basketball player, like you don't expect that to be your first time. But I was at BYU and like I love voice impressions. Like, I don't know, that's just something as a kid growing up, I hear something, I try and copy it, and people think it's funny or whatever. But my uh like media guy at BYU, who I'm really close with, he sold me out to the reporters and like planted the question. So they asked me that. I was kind of caught off guard and had to do like that impression, and then it just went crazy from there. And everyone was like, "Are you the Korg guy?" I'm like, "Bro." So that's kind of the story behind it.
I love it. Well, again, not something I was expecting to see when I looked you up. I'd not heard about it, but Dallin, thank you so much for taking the time. I really hope things go well for you. I think, you got a great personality and you're going to shine in a lot of these interviews. So again, thanks for taking the time to meet with me and do one for us.
Hey, I appreciate you, Julian. Thank you for your time and appreciate all you've done, man.
All right. Well, that is it for the Dallin Hall interview. I know we have more coming up as, the end of the season approaches. We've interviewed Dallin now. We've interviewed Donovan O'Day. We've interviewed McHenry. I forgot his first name. That's not good. Um, but yeah, like, there's going to be more of this stuff coming out. So, Dallin, do you want to drop your social stuff like that where people can find you?
Yeah, my Insta is Dallin_Hall. Um, that's mainly the main social I'd be using, to be honest. I'm not really on Twitter or anything, so you can find me there.
All right, so go follow down there. Follow the Center Hub, obviously, because, that's where I work. And thank y'all for tuning in. And that's it.